The aforementioned Albert Breer, kind enough to join us on short notice. But this is all happening in real time. We showed up this morning, Albert, and all of a sudden there was a report another Titans player has tested positive. They were supposed to go back to the facility today. They got a game against Buffalo this weekend. So where do things stand?
I mean, with a lot of uncertainty, I think is the best way to say it. They're going to have to wait at least 2 days. At least that's what it looks like to reopen their facility, or at least attempt to reopen their facility again, which would mean you'd be entering the facility on Friday. Now, think about this, Dan. Do you think Mike Vrabel, after 2 weeks off, is going to have his players going full go into practice? Probably not, right, on Friday. And then you're into Saturday, and that's just a day for a walkthrough. So you potentially could be putting Titans players out there. And this is if everything goes okay over the next couple of days, and we're not sure about that, out there against the Buffalo Bills in a situation where they haven't practiced in 2 weeks. And so there's player safety issues involved with this now. And there's, obviously like the competitive equity issue too, which I think goes out the window with the Titans. But you think about like this from the rest of the league standpoint. I mean, consider this. The part of the reason the Chiefs Patriots game was held on Monday and not on Tuesday was because the Chiefs are playing the following Thursday. So they got to play 3 games in 10 days now. And that Thursday night opponent for them, that's the Buffalo Bills. And if the Titans-Bills game gets called off, now the Bills would be going into that game on 11 days rest, playing against a Chiefs team that was playing for a third time in 10 days. And that game could wind up being for the number 1 seed in the AFC. So I think that's just like an illustration of how messy things are and how, the league's got a real challenge on its hands right now untangling all of this.
But I'm trying to understand that, though, because let's say the Titans game is postponed this weekend. So now you have to make up 2 weeks, and can you tack it on at the end of the season where the Titans are going to be playing standalone games against Pittsburgh and Buffalo,
right?
Which is not going to be fair to Pittsburgh and Buffalo and some of these other teams here. So could we – I don't know if there's a contingency plan of winning percentage as opposed to sort of like what we had in baseball.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, start here. We knew that there were going to be competitive inequities, right? And that was something that sort of came up in July and August when everything was okay. I think the league tried to message that to some degree, that there was going to be competitive balance problems that were going to be created by this. They anticipated that. That said, I think the question with the Titans now becomes how much at fault were they? And there are a lot of rumors out there about stuff that was happening in Tennessee over the last couple of weeks. And the league's investigation has been going on there for 5 days now. And if they are at fault, do you postpone the Bills game or does that become a forfeit?
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a very real question over the next couple of days where, you could wind up seeing that Titans game against Buffalo wind up being a forfeit and the Titans having to take a loss for it. And as for where they are going forward, I mean, you mentioned it, like there's no more margin for error with the Titans and the Steelers because they've had their bye weeks. Well, over the next 2 months, you're going to start to see that come off the table for everybody. The Packers and Lions are on a bye this week. So after you get out of this week, just for natural reasons, you're going to have no more margin for error with the Packers and Lions. And so, I mean, one answer that I think is obvious to everybody is just to create a week 18 at the end of the season, cancel the Pro Bowl and have them play the playoffs on 4 consecutive weekends in January and February. I think that's something that could be on the horizon. Like you said, that creates some competitive balance issues, but I think everybody knew going into this year playing through COVID that those sorts of issues were going to be there.
Stephon Gilmore has tested positive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they had 2 different planes that went to Kansas City and then came back, correct?
Right.
Those who came in contact with Cam Newton and those who didn't?
Right. So part of the reason why the Patriots' trip to Kansas City was delayed was because they wear those tracking devices. I'm sure you're familiar with this, Dan. They wear, the wristbands and the lanyards that kind of track who they're close to. And so all of that data, when somebody tests positive, the league evaluates that data. And, what I was told was that the Cam Newton's data was abnormally high, like over 20 people had close contacts with Cam Newton. So they pushed the trip back, and then the Patriots make the decision to separate the guys who had close contact with Cam Newton from those who had not. So all of those guys get on one plane. The rest of the team gets on another plane. They all fly to Kansas City, fly back in the same fashion. And then Steph Gilmore's test comes up positive Tuesday going into Wednesday. And what do you know? Steph Gilmore was one of the more than 20 close contacts of Cam Newton. So that, of course, calls the question, what do you do with the other guys now who were close contacts with Cam Newton? How do you handle them going forward? And then, of course, I think a bigger question is, if you do going forward have guys test positive on, say, a Friday or a Saturday, do you take all of their close contacts off the trip as well? It's sort of like this Pandora's box has now been opened as a result of this.
What about punishments for teams? We talked about a forfeit, but there's heavy fines if a coach isn't wearing a mask. But are they talking about taking away draft picks? How serious does this get?
Yeah, I mean, this has been pretty black and white all week. They said it on a conference call. It was in a league memo that went out to the head coaches and the general managers that there were going to be 3 levels of punishment here. They didn't give specifics on what would merit each level of punishment, but they said fines, draft picks, and game forfeitures. And so, certainly I think that, that's something you could see come into play with the Titans situation based on some of the stuff that's floating around out there on what might have happened over the course of the last week and a half in Nashville.
And then you have the Saints. They are relocating to Indianapolis for a Monday night game against the Chargers that they want to play in Indianapolis. And then, oh, by the way, Hurricane Delta is coming towards New Orleans. It's like a game of Clue. Yeah. Somebody with the candlestick in the butler's pantry or whatever it is. When do they decide on if they can play this game in Indianapolis on Monday night against the Chargers?
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those things where it's just and look, we've been through this before where weather has delayed games. I think the Dolphins were in one of these situations a few years back. Obviously, the Texans dealt with this 3-4 years ago with Hurricane Harvey, and the Saints have obviously been in these sorts of situations in the past. So it is separate from the COVID thing, but in certain ways it's not, because now you're going to be putting all these guys in a plane and in close proximity to one another over a longer period of time. And so I think what's sort of interesting about it, Dan, is how this could sort of create a natural bubble for the Saints where almost inadvertently the league might get a test case here of what it might look like if they did want to create 32 bubbles with teams going into hotels like they'd be in during training camp or something like that.
That was a quick poll by Ron Rivera with Dwayne Haskins, and now Kyle Allen gets the start here. Is there anything else to this? Because I looked at Haskins' numbers are better than Daniel Jones, and he's still the starter with the Giants.
Right.
Why are they making this move now with Haskins and bringing in Kyle Allen?
Yeah, I think there are really 2 things, that I've heard over the last couple of days. Number one, I don't think that they feel like Haskins is running the offense at the level they want it run. And, so really from that standpoint, it's about the other 10 guys in the huddle. And that's the way that coaches look at these things. Is he holding back Terry McLaurin? Is he holding back Antonio Gibson? Is he holding back the other people that he's playing with? And I think the coaches there felt like the best thing for the other 10 guys in the huddle right now would be to have a guy out there who's seeing the field a little bit better, who's going into his progressions a little bit deeper. And then the second piece of it is, related to that, which is just that they don't feel like Haskins has come along quick enough. And so I think it's pretty telling that they knocked him down to 3rd on the depth chart, which means he probably won't dress for the game against the Rams. They really feel like they got to sit him down for a little bit and just kind of reset him. I think that tells you all you need to know about where they feel he is in his development.
There's all this Dabo Swinney talk because there's coaching vacancies. And, would he go to the Texans? And I was told no, he wouldn't go to the Texans. But then it was brought up to me yesterday, what if the Falcons' job is open and they have the number 1 pick in the draft? Do you see a scenario where Dabo Swinney would actually leave Clemson to coach in the NFL?
So, I know that there's interest in him, and I know he's been on lists, and that's, how all these things start. Whether or not he would actually do it, I don't know. I don't know him nearly well enough to be able to say one way or the other, but I do think there's going to be opportunity out there for him. And what's so interesting about this, and college coaches know this, I mean, if Dabo asked Nick Saban, what would Nick Saban say about his experience with the Dolphins? Get yourself a quarterback, because that's what I didn't do in Miami. And so, if Dabo has it in his head, at some point I want to take my shot in the NFL, who his quarterback's going to be is a big part of that. And, which quarterbacks does he have the best background on? He has the best background on Deshaun Watson. He has the best background on Trevor Lawrence. And so if, say, a Jacksonville or an Atlanta wound up with the number 1 overall pick and Dabo had it in the back of his head, I got to take my shot at some point at doing this. I want to try the NFL. he would want to take it with a guy he trusts at the most important position on the field. And so I think going to a team, with the number 1 overall pick would, certainly be enticing for him. And I do think the one thing to keep an eye on with the Houston situation there, Dan, a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people have pointed at Jack Easterby's relationships in New England. I'm told that Jack Easterby is very, very close with Clemson coach Dabo Swinney. And so, to me, like, the idea there that maybe Jack Easterby could sort of plant the seed and start.
And he's the GM. Is he the president?
He's basically he's the EVP of football operations, which is amazing because he's gone from team chaplain in Kansas City, the character coach in New England.
Wait.
Now he's basically running the show.
Wait, he was a chaplain?
He was a chaplain. Yep, a chaplain with the Chiefs. And he wound up. In fact, the reason now think about this: he was the chaplain in the Chiefs when the Javon Belcher tragedy happened.
Yeah.
And Scott Pioli was the GM. He wound up in New England because Scott Pioli said to Bill Belichick, "There's the best guy to handle this Aaron Hernandez situation for you is right here. It's Jack Easterby." He rose through the ranks in New England, and then he winds up in Houston with Bill O'Brien. And now with O'Brien fired, he's the top-ranking football official in Houston. And again, I'm told that he has a very close relationship with Dabo. And so, I mean, the idea that maybe Jack Easterby could sell Dabo on the idea, I'm going to let you run the football operation here, and you get to come work with Deshaun.
Wow.
I'm not refuting what you're trying to say about him not going there, but I would think that one of Jack's first phone calls would probably be to Dabo, either to try to get him to go there or to get advice on what he should do.
Great stuff, Albert. We appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
That's Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter, and he works for MMQB.